Hey everyone, I thought I would do a quick video on why it is so hard to hold and accumulate Bitcoin. So I came across on X, i.e. Twitter/X, recently a quote from somebody which I reposted that said, "Holding Bitcoin means getting rich while feeling frustrated 90% of the time." I thought that was great. Holding Bitcoin means getting rich while feeling frustrated 90% of the time. And then another quote from a year or two ago, that's always one of my favorites, was on a panel discussion. And this guy says, Bitcoin's time spent trading in a range-bound band or in a downtrend is what makes it really hard to hodl, meaning hold on for dear life, which means like long-term hold. Makes it really hard to hold because it means you're going to have months and years of pain and you're going to have days of glory. I'm going to read that again. Bitcoin's time spent trading in a range-bound band or in a downtrend is what makes it so hard to hold, because it means you're going to have months and years of pain and you're going to have days of glory. Now, in both of these cases, of course, one person's saying it's 90% of the time it's frustrating to hold Bitcoin. And that's when it's bouncing around up and down from 66,000 to 71,000 and back again and back again and back again. And, so the question is, what's happening the other 10% of the time? Well, 10% of the time, it's euphoria because the price is going up and it's going up in leaps and bounds and everybody's going crazy because they suddenly feel rich and it's super fun. So 90% of the time, it's frustrating because it's bouncing around or trending down, and 10% of the time, it's going up. So how has Bitcoin become one of the top 10 most valuable assets in the entire world if it's going sideways or down 90% of the time? And the answer is because when it goes up by way more than it has been, grinding sideways or grinding down. So as a result, something that used to be worth, 6 pennies is now worth $60,000 a coin, on its way to, in my opinion, $660,000 a coin, or 6.6 million a coin, or 10 to 20x its current price, maybe even more than that. So, and then again, the other quote here says, you get months and years of pain and days of glory. Same concept. In the days of glory, the price is rising from, for example, the mid 40,000s to the mid 60,000s, or even mid 70,000s before falling back. That took place earlier this year in a relatively short period of time. So how is this all going to play out? Well, I feel like I know the future, and the future is frustrating because I feel like I know it, but it doesn't feel like I have a good way of communicating the future in a way that will result in everybody, altering the, their Bitcoin purchasing patterns enough to matter. So what do I think is going to happen? Well, Bitcoin's going to go up eventually sometime in the next days, weeks, months, whatever. It's going to jump into the 80,000s and it'll suddenly be super exciting again. And people will be texting me asking how to buy Bitcoin, and then they'll buy Bitcoin. But the vast majority of people that accumulate this year will be accumulating with a very small percent of their net worth. 1%, 3%, 5%. It's just not going to be that much. And so then Bitcoin will jump, from the 80,000s, and they'll buy another percentage point or two of their net worth. And then they'll do the same thing in the 120,000s, and they'll do the same thing in the 150,000s or whatever. And eventually Bitcoin will cross $500,000 a coin. And so, or let's say 660,000 a coin, because right now, let me check my watch here, the price is 66,424. So let's call it 66,000. So one day it will be 10 times the current price, and it will have outperformed every other $1 trillion asset. Nothing will be even close. Okay, so when that happens, I know what's going to happen. A bunch of people are going to say, wow, Bitcoin was amazing. It outperformed every other asset I owned. Now, the question I won't ask, but the logical question would be, that's great. How much of your net worth did you have in Bitcoin? Because if it was 1% and it 10x'd, you're only 10% better off. If it's 2% and it 10x, then you're 20% better off. But that's pretty, relatively small from a percentage perspective as compared to what it could have been. So there's only really a pretty small number of people I know that have the kind of exposure to Bitcoin where it is absolutely life transforming for it to 10x. Because in order for it to 10x, let's say you have to have at least 10% of your net worth in Bitcoin. If you have at least 10% and it 10x's, well, then you've doubled your total net worth, because that 10% times 10x is 100% of your net worth plus, the 90% you already had, and you've effectively doubled your net worth in round numbers. But most people are not going to get there. So it feels like most of the time what I feel like when I'm recording, videos or posting online about Bitcoin is that I'm, encouraging everybody to build the lifeboat because the floodwaters are coming, and everybody's sort of tinkering around and doing a little bit this, a little bit there, dipping a toe in the water. And I wish there was some way I could download the thousands of hours I've spent researching monetary policy, how governments operate, how politicians think and set policy related to, money, the Federal Reserve. I wish I could just download like these thousands of hours I have bouncing around in my head from the last 15 years of studying all this stuff. I wish I could download that to like everybody. And then at least everybody would be making a eyes wide open, informed decision about Bitcoin. Because, the classic story I hear from people on Bitcoin, which I heard from like 4 people in the last 24 hours. So, recent sample size is, yeah, I heard about Bitcoin. I bought a tiny little bit of it, but it was so expensive that I bought a handful of this other junk coins, Shiba, Nu, or Dogecoin. And that didn't really do anything. And I lost interest and moved on. Right? That's the classic story is people, they buy a little bit of Bitcoin, then they think maybe they missed out on Bitcoin, and they, so they screw around and mess around with other stuff, and then the other stuff really doesn't do anything or it crashes, and they never really did the work to figure out what is Bitcoin, why is it valuable, why is a borderless, predictable, scarce monetary system the future of the world. And so this is not unique to Bitcoin. A few more thoughts here. It's not unique to Bitcoin. For example, the same would be true in the early days of Amazon. Let's say, at the founding of Amazon, if you were one of the early people that was following every element of the internet revolution and online e-commerce and all that sort of stuff, and you were following every single aspect of it, and you were trying to explain to everybody that, hey, e-commerce is a big deal. And everybody's like, yeah, but, I could just drive across the parking lot to Walmart. When I pick my kids up from school, I could just go to the other side of the parking lot, go to the Walmart. Like, why is Amazon a big deal? And it's like, for 2 decades, you spend telling people, Amazon is a big deal. Amazon is a big deal. And in that time, Amazon's going from being worth $1 billion to being worth $10 billion to being worth $100 billion to being worth $500 billion to being worth $1 trillion to being worth whatever it is now, $2 trillion, whatever it's worth. And that whole time you're telling people, hey, Amazon is a big deal. Like, it's a big deal. And everybody's like, yeah, but, is it? Is it really? And then anybody who's not skeptical that it's a big deal thinks they missed out. So inevitably, like when I talk to people about Bitcoin, they're either skeptical. They're skeptical that, it is as good as I think it is, and that, hundreds of millions of people like me think it is. They're either skeptical, or as soon as they're not skeptical and they think it is a big deal, well, now they're worried they missed out. And they think, well, $66,000 a coin is super expensive. So why would I get on the bandwagon at $66,000 a coin when it's super expensive? If I was going to buy Bitcoin, I should have bought it, a lot sooner. Well, the same was true, right? The people who were buying it at 6 cents feel like they had missed out because a lot of people were accumulating at 4 cents. And the people who were buying it at 60 cents thought they should have bought it at 30 cents or 20 cents. And the people who were buying it for $6 thought that they had missed out because they could have bought Bitcoin a year or two previously for $1 or $2. And the people who were buying Bitcoin at, all the way up at $60, at $600,000, $600, at $6,000, at $66,000 where it is today. Everybody is either skeptical or they feel like they've missed out. And so the total number of people that are understanding Bitcoin every day is a relatively small percentage of the world population. And that relatively small population keeps growing. And, thankfully it's a lot of people over time. It's a huge number of people. But it's, the vast majority of people end up getting left out in the cold because they're too skeptical to get on board, or they dip their toe in the water and messed around with, worthless crypto tokens and lost interest. Or they've come around to realizing Bitcoin is a huge deal, but now they feel like they missed out and they're too late, and, they don't want to accumulate at these expensive prices. Well, again, there's never been a point in time where people did not think Bitcoin was expensive. So, if they thought it was expensive at 6 cents and $6 and $60 and $600 and $6,000, then why is it expensive at $66,000 when one day it's going to be worth $660,000 and on up it, and up it goes, just up it goes. So anyways, those are some thoughts. I think, in the near future here, if history is any guide from past halving cycles, we will have a wild, epic, bull run in the second half of this year and the first half of next year. And all sorts of people are going to tell me that they really wish they had bought more Bitcoin. And, now they feel like they missed out. It'll be the story over and over and over again. So I'm doing my best to get the word out. Super thankful to all the people who have reached out to me. Obviously, a lot of people have bought a lot of Bitcoin that are, have watched my videos and read my posts and all that. But I think as a percentage of net worth for most people, it is still very small. And I think the vast majority of people will still wish at some point that the total amount of Bitcoin they bought was a much larger percentage of their net worth than the amount they ultimately did buy, when they could have bought it, significantly more than they ultimately did at less than $70,000 per coin. So hope my random musings on a Sunday night about Bitcoin are helpful. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks.